Two rats are placed inside a glass enclosure. Both are healthy. Both are fed the same food. Both are exposed to the same sounds, the same light, the same temperature. But one of them has been infected with a parasite. A few weeks later, a cat enters the room. The healthy rat freezes. The infected one walks toward the smell of the predator. Not because it wants to die, because something inside its brain has quietly rewritten what fear feels like. The parasite is called Toxoplasma gondii, a microscopic organism that reproduces inside cats and spreads through blood, tissue, and contaminated soil. Today, roughly 1 out of every 3 humans on Earth may carry it. Most never notice. No fever, no pain, no obvious symptoms. But over the last few decades, scientists began noticing something deeply unsettling. The parasite did not just infect bodies, it appeared to influence behavior. And if they are right, one of the most widespread organisms on Earth may be subtly shaping the way human beings think, fear, take risks, and interact with each other. Not through mind control in the science fiction sense. Something quieter than that, something evolutionary. The story begins in 1908 inside a laboratory in North Africa. 2 researchers, Charles Nicole and Louis Monceau, discovered a strange protozoan parasite living inside the tissues of a small rodent called a gondii. Under a microscope, the organism looked almost delicate, crescent-shaped, and translucent. They named it Toxoplasma gondii. At the time, nobody thought it mattered much. Just another parasite in a world already full of them. But Toxoplasma had an unusual life cycle. It could infect almost any warm-blooded animal on Earth: birds, wolves, dolphins, sheep, chimpanzees, humans. Yet it could only reproduce sexually inside one specific creature: cats. Which created a problem. If a parasite infects a rat but needs a cat to complete its life cycle, how does it get from one animal into the other? The obvious answer is predation. The rat must be eaten, and that is where Toxoplasma becomes terrifying. In the 1990s, researchers at Stanford and Oxford began studying infected rodents more carefully. What they found looked impossible. Rats infected with Toxoplasma behaved differently around cats. Not just slightly differently, fundamentally differently. Healthy rats instinctively avoid cat urine. The smell triggers deep survival circuits evolved over millions of years. But infected rats lost that fear. Some even appeared attracted to it. The parasite had somehow interfered with the rodent's predator response, making it easier for the rat to be killed and the parasite to return to the cat's body where reproduction could continue. A parasite manipulating the behavior of its host to complete its own evolutionary agenda. And then someone asked the uncomfortable question, what if it does something similar to humans? At first, the idea sounded absurd. Humans are not rats. We do not get eaten by cats. Most infected people function completely normally. But as larger population studies emerged, patterns began appearing again and again. In the Czech Republic, a scientist named Jaroslav Fleger spent years studying Toxoplasma in humans. According to some of his findings, infected individuals showed measurable behavioral differences compared to uninfected people. Reaction times slowed slightly. Risk-taking increased. Traffic accidents appeared more common. Certain personality traits shifted in statistically detectable ways. In some studies, infected men became more suspicious and rule-breaking. Infected women became more socially warm and trusting. Other research suggested possible links between Toxoplasma and depression, schizophrenia, impulsive behavior, and even suicide risk. Not certainty, not proof, but correlation strong enough to disturb researchers, especially because the parasite was everywhere. Cats spread Toxoplasma through microscopic eggs called oocysts released in feces. Those eggs can survive in soil or water for months. A person can become infected by cleaning a litter box, drinking contaminated water, eating undercooked meat, or simply touching contaminated earth and then their mouth. Once inside the body, the parasite forms cysts, and some of those cysts migrate into the brain, not randomly. Toxoplasma seems unusually drawn toward regions involved in emotion and fear, which raises a horrifying possibility. What if human behavior is not entirely human? What if some of our impulses are partly biological negotiations with organisms living inside us? This sounds like science fiction until you realize how much of human life is already controlled by invisible organisms. Your body contains more bacterial cells than human ones, entire colonies living in your mouth, skin, intestines, lungs. The microbiome influences digestion, immunity, hormone production, even mood. Certain gut bacteria appear connected to anxiety, others influence cravings. Some studies suggest microbes may affect sleep and stress responses. The border between you and the organisms inside you is blurrier than most people realize. And Toxoplasma is not the only parasite capable of behavioral manipulation. There is a fungus called Ophiocordyceps that infects ants and forces them to climb vegetation before killing them, allowing fungal spores to spread farther. Hairworms compel insects to drown themselves in water so the parasite can reproduce. Lancet liver flukes hijack ants and force them to clamp onto grass tips where grazing animals will eat them. Nature is full of organisms turning other organisms into vehicles. The unsettling part is not that parasites manipulate behavior. The unsettling part is that humans assumed they were exempt. But the deeper story is not really about Toxoplasma. It is about how fragile human free will may actually be. Most people imagine their thoughts as entirely self-generated, rational, independent, conscious. But neuroscience has been steadily dismantling that illusion for years. Hormones alter decisions. Sleep deprivation changes morality. Loneliness changes perception. Chronic stress rewires memory and attention. Social isolation increases paranoia. Fear spreads through crowds faster than facts. Human beings like to imagine themselves as detached minds steering biological machines. In reality, consciousness sits on top of ancient chemistry we barely understand, and sometimes that chemistry has passengers. Still, Toxoplasma remains controversial. Many scientists caution against exaggerating its effects. Some studies fail replication, others find only weak associations. Human behavior is extraordinarily complicated, and correlation does not equal causation. A person infected with Toxoplasma does not become a puppet. That is important. The parasite may influence tendencies, not dictate actions, but even that is enough to raise disturbing questions. If tiny organisms can slightly alter fear, attraction, impulsivity, or social behavior across millions of people, then the cumulative effect on societies could be enormous, especially over generations. Some researchers have explored whether infection rates correlate loosely with cultural differences between countries. Others have investigated links to entrepreneurship, neuroticism, aggression, or accident frequency. Most of these theories remain debated, but the fact they can even be proposed seriously tells you how radically science has begun reconsidering human behavior. The old model treated the mind as separate from the body. The newer model sees the mind as an ecosystem, and ecosystems are vulnerable to influence. There is another reason this story resonates so deeply. Because modern humans desperately want to believe they are fully in control of themselves, that our thoughts belong entirely to us, that our desires emerge from conscious choice. But biology has always been less clean than that. Evolution did not design humans for truth. It designed humans for survival, and survival often means surrendering control to systems older than consciousness itself. The parasite does not hate you. It does not even know you exist. Toxoplasma gondii has likely been evolving for millions of years, moving silently between predator and prey long before the first human being ever painted a cave wall. It has survived ice ages, extinctions, migrations, civilizations, and right now it may already exist quietly inside billions of human brains, not as a monster, not as a demon, just as another organism trying to continue its life cycle inside the machinery of life. That is the uncomfortable truth hiding underneath this entire story. Human beings do not stand outside nature observing it safely from above. We are inside it, completely inside it. Our bodies are ecosystems. Our thoughts are chemical events. Our fears, desires, and behaviors emerge from systems shaped by evolution, hormones, microbes, trauma, memory, and survival instincts layered over millions of years. The line between self and environment is thinner than we want it to be. And maybe that is why this idea frightens people so much. Because somewhere deep down, we sense that consciousness is less solid than it feels. That beneath the language and technology and civilization, the human brain is still an ancient biological object vulnerable to forces too small to see. A microscopic parasite enters a rat and changes its relationship with fear. Now imagine a species of 8 billion creatures convinced they are fully rational, and ask yourself how many invisible things are already shaping the way we live without us ever noticing at all.